Hello friends, welcome to Carla's Kitchen. Today we are making a delectable meatloaf dish. So what I've got here going left to right is 6 ounces of my favorite herb flavored stuffing, some Marsala cooking wine, a preheated oven, fresh cracked pepper, fresh cracked sea salt, garlic powder, 2 eggs, a packet of brown gravy mix. I've got some fresh chopped sage. If you don't have fresh, the dried is perfectly fine. Some caps, mushroom caps that are washed and chopped. Here I've got a finely diced mixture of 1 celery stalk, 1 small bell pepper, and about 3/4 of a large onion. 2 pounds of ground round. High fat content gives you a little more flavor, a little more juice. Use what you like. And I'm going to be cooking mine in a bundt pan. You can use, with this recipe, you'll probably need 2 of the standard bread pans if you're doing the bread pan recipe. Okay, that's it to get started. So first what we're going to do, instead of just mixing the add-ins directly into the meat, I'm going to cook them a little bit so that they just really dissolve into the meatloaf. I finely diced them for a reason. I want to get them a little bit pre-softened in a pan. And then we're going to mix up the meatloaf, throw it into grease the bundt, throw it into the bundt and into the oven. You can go ahead and preheat your oven to 375, and then we shall do the next steps. Go ahead and get your pan preheating on the stovetop over medium heat. And while that's warming up, we're going to take our stuffing, 6 ounces, your favorite stuffing, preferably herb flavored. Go with what you like. 1 cup of hot tap water and a fork. Just spread that water around. The stuffing is going to soak it up quickly. Go ahead and give everything a good stir. Try to get as much of the breadcrumb stuffing covered in the water as you can. It's going to soak it up really fast. And if there's a little bit of hard dry pieces, don't sweat it. It's going into the meatloaf, so it will definitely have a chance to soak up more moisture. We just want to get that sort of processing, and then we're going to get over to the stovetop and start preparing our veggies to go in the meatloaf. And once your pan is hot, we're going to add a little bit of non-stick agent to it. I'm using olive oil today. Use whatever you like, what you have on hand, any type of oil, butter, etc. Give the oil a moment to heat up, and then we're going to go in with our veggies. And then we're going to go in with some seasoning right off the bat. We want to throw some ground pepper in there. If you don't have pepper grinder, just use regular pre-ground pepper. It's fine. Going to go in with some salt. And a little bit of garlic powder. You can use fresh here instead of the powder. Your choice. Give that a stir to mix it. And just keep your veggies moving before you, every couple of minutes. We don't want them to get overly done on one side. We're aiming to soften and season the veggies before they go into the meatloaf mix. As your onions begin to go translucent, now would be the time you'd want to add fresh garlic. You don't want to add it too early and have it burn. That ruins the taste of everything else in the dish. So give another quick stir, and we're going to go in with the mushrooms. If you choose to add those in, give those just a minute. Give them a good stir to combine all the ingredients here. Break up any of the larger pieces. And to give a little additional flavor, we're going to add just a splash of Marsala cooking wine. Give another stir. And spread the veggies back out. Let everything soak that in. Let it go for a couple of more minutes. Should be over medium heat. Give a stir and check on your liquid levels. The marsala should be soaking up pretty quickly after a couple minutes of cooking. Go ahead and do a taste test. If you need extra flavoring at this point, add some more salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And while the rest of the marsala finishes cooking off, I'm going to go in with my sage and give that a good mix as well. We're going to let that cook just until it's aromatic. You should begin smelling the wonderful flavors that we're developing here. Let it simmer for a minute, and then we're going to take it off the stove top to cool. While your veggies are cooling down a bit, go ahead and fluff your stuffing. Grease your pan. If you're using non-stick, you may just need a light coating of grease, but you should ensure release from the pan. Go ahead and give it a little bit of love. Next, we're going to go ahead and throw some seasoning into our ground beef. I'm going in with the same seasoning I used earlier in the pan, minus the marsala. So we've got salt. We're going to do a healthy dose of pepper. A little bit of garlic powder. And I'm going to crack in my 2 eggs. As well as adding in 1 packet of brown gravy mix. Go in with the stuffing. Get as much as you can out of the bowl. Since we've got 2 whole pounds of ground round here. If any stuck to the fork, go ahead and salvage that. And then the last item we're going to go in with is our vegetables. And now that I can reach my vegetables, we're going to add those to the meatloaf as well. Scrape all that goodness out of the pan into your mixing bowl. It might still be a little bit warm, but you should be able to touch it at this stage, because the next step is to get your hands dirty and mix all these ingredients up. While you can use a utensil, I find you get the best mixing when going by hand. So we're going to go ahead and mix this and then add it to whatever grease pan we have that you're using. I'm using the bundt pan, you use what you like. And once you've gotten your arm workout in for the day and everything looks very well incorporated, go ahead and go into your greased pan, and we're going to go into the oven. We're going to start checking around 55 minutes for doneness. Just try to make sure everything's at about an even layer. Give it a little bit of a smoothing. This will be the bottom when it's finished if you're using the bundt pan. Otherwise, you're looking at the top if you're in a regular bread loaf pan. You don't want to push it too hard into the sides. We do want this to release when we're done, but you want to make sure your top is pretty even for cooking purposes. Into a 375 oven, and we're going to check it at about 55 minutes. Alright folks, when making homemade mashed potatoes, when one has the time to do so, pick whatever kind of potato you like. I like Goldens. I like to leave the skin on. If you don't want the skin on your potatoes, peel them before you cut them up. I find that dicing them about to like hash brown size or home fry size, it just makes them boil faster. So, and it's a little easier to mash. So that's what I do. So once you've got your potatoes washed and cut up the way that you like, into the pot you go. This one. There we go. Got your potatoes in the pot, and go ahead and just cover with water. Give them a little room to bounce around in there, but not so much that your pot's going to boil over. So you see I didn't even use all the water I had put out. And that's just cold tap water. We're going to go into the stove top and boil until fork tender. Now I normally like to do my veggies oven roasted, but my oven is busy at a different temperature with the meatloaf in it today. So I'm going to make a squash, zucchini, and onion side dish just using a pot on the stove top. So first thing I'm going to do is actually prep my pot so nothing burns and sticks to the bottom. I'm going to put some white cooking wine in the bottom there. A hearty spoonful of minced garlic with the juices. Sorry, I banged at the same time with the juices. And then I'm going to put 3 to 4 tablespoons of butter into the pot as well, because we're just going to layer all the veggies on top, throw a lid on it, and sort of forget about it until it's ready. So go ahead and chop up your veggies and put them in the pot when they're cut. Since I cut my veggies about ½ inch-ish, I'm going to go ahead and cut the slices then into quarters so that they'll cook faster, so we can have everything come to at the same time. I like to dice my onion up julienne. Feel free to cut however you want. You can certainly chop it chunky or fine, up to you. That one's a little thick. Let me go back in. And as I said, as you chop your veggies, get them into the pot. We're just going to layer everything in together and get it onto the stovetop. When cutting up the squash, the neck end is usually smaller, so I just cut those pieces in slices and then in half. And then as I get to the larger end of the squash, I go ahead and slice and then quarter those like I did with the zucchini. At this point, your pot should be looking pretty full, so you can go in, if you're concerned with any additional little pats of butter. Just to keep everything moist while it's cooking, make sure we don't have a burning situation. And if you're concerned, you can always add, you don't have to add more cooking wine, you can put a little bit of water down in there. Now is also a great time to put a little salt and pepper on top. We're going to put a lid on it and get over to the stove. Go ahead and start with your flame on high so we can build up heat quickly in your zucchini squash mixture here. I haven't stirred it yet because it's much easier to do once it starts to cook down just a little bit. I'm also going to put the lid on now, again, to help build up heat faster. And then once I see we're starting, you can see the butter on the edges. Once that really starts to melt down, I'm going to lower my flame down to medium low. It's time to give your potatoes a stir. They've been boiling for a little while. Go ahead and get some out. And see, not quite fork tender yet. So we're going to let those go a little while longer until the fork pierces easily, and then they're ready to mash. Once you see that you've got boiling going in your pot with the veggies, go ahead and give a good stir from the bottom up to make sure that everything is incorporated. And you get that, you'll separate the onion pieces by doing this, you'll mix the zucchini and squash together, and you'll ensure that everything gets that good flavor that we've built down in the bottom of the pot. Not just infused via the steaming, but also a little bit of boiling down in the juice. And you can see how much it's shrunk down already. We've already lost, we're up at the top, now we're down to here. So let that go a little while longer with the lid on. And you can go ahead and reduce your flame at this point to medium-low. Once your potatoes become fork tender, give one last check, find the biggest piece, the fork slides right in, you're ready to drain. Go ahead and drain the water, pour the potatoes and water into a colander in the sink, and then we'll put the potatoes back into the bowl for mashing. While your meatloaf is out of the oven cooling, go ahead and get started on your potatoes. They should be well drained. You can put them back in the same pot they came out of. Go ahead and add some butter in there while they're still hot before mashing. I also like to add some garlic salt and a little bit of salt and pepper. Potatoes are really bland. If you don't season them up, you'll need to on your plate. And I just like to have everything seasoned before it gets to the plate. That's just personal preference. So I've added garlic salt, pepper, and I'm going to go in with a little bit of sea salt as well. And a bit of sea salt. Now I'm just going to start hand mashing at this stage. If you have some other kind of masher that you like to use, or you want to use, kitchen tool, an electric kitchen tool of sorts, that's fine. As you mash the butter, it should be melting away anyways. And just do a little bit of a stir with your masher as you go. Personally, I think one of the other good things about homemade mashed potatoes, if you will, or real mashed potatoes, not using the flakes, is that you get a little bit of lumps in there. So I like to leave some of the lumps, but if you don't, then just keep mashing until you're at the consistency that you want. Personally, I like to go in with a little bit of chicken stock. And I'm going to use the homemade chicken stock that I happen to have made today. And I'm just going to give a couple of spoons, stir it, and then check and see if we need any more. It's always a check and see. Also, if you like cheesy mashed potatoes, now's a good time to add the cheese. If they're still hot enough, everything's going to melt. But adding the liquid is what gives you the creamy consistency that we're used to with mashed potatoes. They're still a touch thick. I'm going to put just a little bit more. You can always add more. Taking it out, it's kind of tricky. So one more spoonful. Give that a good stir, and we're good to go. They should thicken up again a little bit just from the starches setting up and as they cool. So go ahead and check on your veggies and see if they're ready to come off of the stove. You want to let your meatloaf go in the oven until you see a nice crust on the top side, whatever side that may be for you. For me, in this case, it will be the bottom. If you're using a regular bread loaf pan, then it will be the actual top. And you want to see that the meat's pulled away from the edges just a bit. We're going to let this sit for about 5 minutes to just sort of set up before we try to get it out of the bunt. If you notice any places that may be stuck, feel free to take a knife in and just go and gently release the edges around if you need to. Alright, moment of truth. So once you've loosened your edges and allowed your meatloaf to sit for a few minutes, get a plate that is larger than your bunt pan. Place it upside down over the pan. Hold tightly together and give it a flip. If your meatloaf doesn't seem to want to come out on the first try, go back in with your knife and give it a little more coaxing. A little less gently this time. Put your plate back on, hold tightly, and flip over. And if all else fails and part of your meatloaf is stuck, it is still very edible. It's just not going to be as pretty as what you would have wanted.